Well, that was exciting. Now I get to repeat it all over again. Hi, I'm Teresa Coates. I'm really excited to be here. And I am thrilled to get the chance to be here and teach you guys again. Maybe if we haven't met, I was the national educator for Shannon Fabrics for 8 years and taught about Cuddle to lots and lots of people across the country, which was wonderful. We got it? Okay, good. And now I'm a Cuddle ambassador. So I'm still teaching Cuddle classes and still spreading the gospel of Cuddle Minky. So today we want to talk all about it, answer your questions, and get you over that hump of working with Cuddle. And if you are already working with it, to maybe expose you to some new ideas and new patterns. So I am really excited to be here. Is there anything we need to tell them beforehand before we get started? We talked about all of this, and then of course it just like zips away when I get on the live. One, we're going to have giveaways at the end, so stick around. Two, if you have questions, please go ahead and post them into the comments. So Mary is there to help out with the comments, and Hawke is as well. And then anything that I need to answer or I can show. So if you want to see something or you have a specific question, please feel free to ask. This is the time that we get to kind of have this interchange where you get to find out all the things that you wanted to find out. So I'm excited to do it. I think that's the bulk of the comments, right? If you haven't subscribed, we're going to do this once a month. So make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel to be able to get notifications for that. We'll talk more about it at the end about what we're going to do next month and all of that good stuff. But I think if that's it.
It's great to see everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being here. So if that's it, let's get started with the first thing, which is Cuddle versus Minky. What is the difference between Cuddle and Minky? So this is a question that I get a lot, and people always want to know what's the difference. Minky is a kind of fabric. So Minky is just a type of knit plush fabric. Okay. It is just, yeah, it is a generic term and it is a type of fabric. Cuddle is a trademark name for Shannon Fabrics, and it is their specific brand of Minky fabrics. So a lot of times you'll hear us Cuddle ambassadors talk about Cuddle, 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 and then talk about Minky otherwise, because it's kind of how we differentiate it because Cuddle is kind of the best out there. And so it's not even kind of, it just is. So we talk about them in different ways to differentiate the quality, because there's a big difference between the Minky that you'll buy from Shannon Fabrics and the Minky that you'll buy at a big box store. They're just very, very different. So I want to talk a little bit about those differences and how we're gonna work with them. The stuff that you'll find at the box store is not going to be as soft. It's generally a lot stretchier, and it doesn't wear as well. So one of the problems that people complain about that is that the fibers will fall off, that it will kind of like just shed for a long time. And Minky in and of itself will shed when you cut it, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But overall, Cuddle fabrics won't keep shedding at all once they've been cut and the initial shed is done. There's a strong fiber, they're softer, and they just are much more pliable and easy to work with, honestly. So let's talk about the things that you can do with it. Are you ready to hand me some samples, Hawke?
Absolutely.
Okay, so lots of people know that you can make a ton of different things with Cuddle. Yep. We're going to start with the basic. So this is one that many, many people have made, is the infinity scarf. It's a super easy one. I will tell you numerous times that there is a tutorial for this, because I've done, 200 tutorials for different projects in Cuddle. There is a tutorial for this one. There's also kits available. We're going to have these kits at our retreat this summer to work through them, but if you can find them at a lot of quilt shops. So quilt shops will sell these in little kits, and they're just a little roll, basically, of fabric that will make one scarf. It is super easy. It's 2 seams and a little bit of hand sewing if you want to do it. All right, so let me grab some other, give me a little pile here.
There you go.
I want to show some different things. So as you develop your skills with working with Cuddle, there's lots of things that you can do. If you have not worked with Cuddle, I really recommend that you start with something small. We're going to talk about a new pattern that I have called the Love Language Pillow a little bit later, but that one we can start with a really small bit and just doing applique. So working from a small project up to a big one is a much better way of learning to just to deal with the fabric and to work with it and understand its unique characteristics. So you'll learn more as you work with these projects. So starting with a small thing like an infinity scarf is really great. There are tons of kits that the company offers. This is an older one that I'd actually had in my pile to finish the binding for maybe close to a year, and then it took me 20 minutes to do the binding. I don't know why it sat there for so long. But this is a little kit. So there's lots of like little baby kits that have a couple of different fabrics, and you can learn to work with the Cuddle. So this is a printed Cuddle. This is a digitally printed Cuddle. And this fluffier stuff is called Luxe Cuddle. And we'll work through a little bit of that in a bit when we're talking about the pinning and cutting. But they are different. So there's Cuddle and Luxe Cuddle. And they are different. And oftentimes people will mistakenly call Luxe Cuddle faux fur, but it is not a faux fur. And I will say that numerous times because it is something that gets said, unfortunately, by shops and stuff like that. It'll list it as a faux fur, and it's not. Faux furs are acrylic and can't be washed. Luxe Cuddle is absolutely machine washable, which is fabulous. So another project that a lot of people like to start with is a blanket. There's a 2-yard throw that you can make that is really a lovely, beautiful blanket. But that's 2 yards on either side, and it's a lot of fabric to deal with. So I recommend the Cuddle Baby Blanket, which if you were able to get the show notes from the website, there is a link to that. You can also find the link on the Shannon Fabrics on their website. So it's the Cuddle Baby Blanket, and it's just a 1-yard piece of fabric. So this is just 1 yard that then you cut in half vertically so that you have a 30 by 36 inch piece. And then you get 2 of those, put them together, and you have a lovely blanket. This is a great way to start because you will learn how to cut the fabric, pin it, sew it, and it's really, you're only dealing with 1 full yard of fabric. So it's much easier to kind of handle and understand how it works. We'll talk more about this one later because it's got some fun things in it. Let me get this. Would you grab me a couple other, the little bag and the quilt too? Okay, so this is a fun little one. This is another great, easy project to start with. And this actually uses the, it's the shoulder, baby shoulder, I can't remember what they're called now. Like a shoulder pad, a burp cloth, basically, that goes over your shoulder. And it's kind of this oval shape, oval shape that has these crooked out ends. This is 3 of them stuck together, and it makes a nice little travel pillow. So it's a really easy one of just sewing these seams. It seems curvier than it actually is, but because you sew the 3 of them together.
So is there a pattern for that?
It's just the AccuQuilt dye is what
okay.
was used for it. Yeah,
Got
super
it.
duper easy. And I know I've seen that one being taught at stores, so it's a good one. You can also do fun things like little bags. This is just a little zipper pouch. We'll talk more about doing embroidery with it later. It is fabulous for embroidery and applique. I absolutely love it.
Who was the designer on that? That's Parker on the porch.
That's Parker
right?
on the porch. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And all of the designers of stuff that I'm showing that are other patterns, that's on that list of the show notes, which you can find if you go to Crinkle Dreams. You'll have to look for show notes. If you do a search for show notes,
It's actually
show
a
up.
product. Yeah.
It's a product.
CrinkleDreams.com.
And then you'll find it, and it has all of the patterns and everything listed. This is one of my favorite samples, and I have shown this all over the place because I absolutely love it. So this is a quilt that I made a few years ago using Latifah Saphir's clammy rulers. And so I made this quilt, and then I did a self-binding with the Sparkle Cuddle, which is fabulous. They no longer have it in navy, but they do sell it in several colors, and you'll notice I'll show a few samples. I realized yesterday when I was pulling samples, I really do love the Sparkle Cuddle because I have like 4 samples with it. But in a quilt backing, it's wonderful. I'm going to see if I can get this closer so you guys can see any of the quilting. Can you see the quilting just a little bit? So it's a really fun little quilting, but the sparkle in it is so lovely. I love that. So you can self-bind a quilt when it's long-armed, or you can actually just bind it separately like you would for any other cuddle kit. Okay, so we'll show some other things. I have a few more samples that I'll show you at the end when we talk more about pattern designers. But that gives you an overall idea of things that you can make with it. You can also make coats are really lovely, jackets. People do hoods. We have the hooded infinity scarf that we did a tutorial for a few years ago that is super cute and really easy to do. There's just a ton of things. So apparel, toys, blankets, whatever you want to make, you can absolutely make with it. All right. So are there any questions that we've got going yet? We're doing all right.
I think we're doing okay.
Okay, good. All right. So now, oh yeah.
We're just gonna apologize now for the video quality.
Is the video bad?
It's pretty jerky right now, and we are aware of it. And there's literally nothing that I'm going to try to do about it while we're in the stream. So everybody, just bear with us.
Yeah.
That's what's going on.
Yep. All right.
It worked great last night. Technology.
It did.
It's a thing.
It did. Maybe we can remove the outside cameras when we're not doing the front facing. I don't know. We'll see if we can deal with it. Okay, so let's talk about, so we're gonna put all of them up for a second and take them out. Is that what we're doing?
Yep.
So let's talk about cutting the fabric. This is really, there's two things that people, when they say that they don't want to work with Cuddle and they don't want to work with Minky in general, it's two reasons. It shifts, it moves, and it makes a mess. And these are two things that are qualities of the fact that it is a plush fabric and that it is a knit fabric. So there's no way to make it not make a mess at all unless we made it just a woven fabric and not plush. So if we want it soft, it's going to make some mess. The reason it makes a mess is because when we're cutting it, we tend to cut the fibers that are on the right side of the fabric, and then that leaves the little bits, kind of gives it a little haircut, and we have the little extras. So part of it is really trying to make sure that we're not cutting more of that than we need to. And that really means taking our time when we're doing the cutting to not make a mess. There's also the perspective that you can totally just make a mess and then vacuum it up, and that's fine too. I tend to err on the side of not making such a mess. But
would you show us our favorite vacuum cleaner?
I will.
Okay.
But so let's talk about cutting it, and we'll go over to the other camera. Okay, so we'll go to the top down.
Got it.
Okay. So this is that paper that you can get. So if you go to crinkledreams.com and look for show notes, this is what it is. And for anybody who's downloaded it already, all of the blue here, these are all clickable links. So if you have the PDF, you should be able to just click on this and be able to go get that, the tip sheet or go to the pattern site, all of that good stuff. Okay. All right. So I have a couple of different samples here that I want to show you. This is a piece of Cuddle 3 is what we call it. And it's a 3mm nap. So you can see there's just a tiny little bit of nap here. It's, like I said, 3mm. It's pretty short. And the one thing to remember about Cuddle is that it's important to note the nap. And it is directional. So because I've worked with this long enough, I can see which direction it is just by looking at it. And I can tell it's this direction. But a lot of times it's really hard. And if we put it this way, I can't really see a difference. But if I put it this direction, I can totally see a difference. And that's how I know that this is the bottom and this is the top. Okay, so it actually goes like this. So this is top to bottom. It'll go smooth. So a lot of times what I like to do is to mark it on the back when I'm figuring this out. And I know that this is my nap direction. So I'll mark it. And that way I have this to reference back to when I'm putting my patterns on. Okay, when I'm looking at something, oh, I want to show you the other thing about this, the other way to know which way the nap is going. So this way I can ruffle it back and we get what we call zebra stripes in there. I can also stretch it this direction, and I can't stretch it this direction. Okay, so it just barely has any stretch here, but it has quite a lot of stretch this direction. Okay, so that's an easy way to say that the lengthwise of it doesn't have stretch, the widthwise does. So there are going to be patterns that you'll find, especially the Shannon Fabrics patterns, that will use this stretch here to your benefit. The scarf is an example of that it doesn't lay as nicely when you cut it the other direction. So we have you cut it length of fabric so that it lays better. Okay, so this is a Luxe Cuddle. I think this is Luxe Cuddle Seal is what this one is. And this one I can kind of swoof it around, and it kind of looks the same from a lot of ways, but if I push it this direction, I can see that it stands straight up. You probably can't see so much of a difference. Oh, you can. Okay, so I can see that it changes the color and it changes the way that it works. So I know this is top down. So again, I would go ahead and mark it. All right. And that helps when I'm going to cut things out that I know which direction it goes. So something that's different about working with Cuddle fabrics is that we want to cut things out with the nap going in the right direction. So we mark it, and it's easier to mark it on the back than it is on the front. So for an example, I have just a pattern piece that I wanted to bring out just so we can see. I could cut this out. So a lot of times when I'm working with the luxe fabrics, I'm doing pieces like this sort of thing for a stuffed animal or something. Okay. And I want to trace this on the back rather than trying to place it on the front and cut around this. So if I go ahead and I pin this, you can start to see how it will distort the shape of it because of the fact that it is knit and fluffy. So when I cut around this, this is not flat at all. So you can see it even better here, that you're not going to get a very accurate cut because of the fact that it's a knit. So if I instead place this on the back, and I've got my little Sew Tights board here, so I'm just going to use the magnets because that's really easy. I'm going to put this here. So my nap direction is marked. I know that it's going to coordinate with this here. I could put these on here, stick this down, trace around it. Oops. Okay. And then I have a much more accurate shape. So when I cut this out, it's going to be the shape that I want and not some distorted thing. So it's really important to be able to cut it from the back for this, or to trace the patterns onto the back for that reason. The same goes with the Cuddle 3. I do it on the back as well with this because it's just easier to see and do. If you really want to cut from the front, you can, but you can't trace. So you have to place this here, keep the pattern on here, and then hope it doesn't move on you. So I'd rather trace them out onto the back and then cut them. Okay. So now we talk about cutting. The Cuddle 3, because it has a shorter nap, makes a lot less mess. So with this one, I don't really bother too much with it. I just trace things out and cut them, and it's no big deal. I'm going to go ahead and cut it a couple of different ways for you. So with the C3 is what we call it, the Cuddle 3, I tend to just use a ruler and my rotary cutter. Okay, so I can absolutely just cut it. Totally fine. It has a little bit of nap that comes off the side. This will be different if I cut it this direction. So this was a lengthwise cut. All right. If I cut it widthwise, we're going to get a little bit more of a shed. Okay. And the reason for that is because the nap is coming this way. It's coming down. So when I cut it, I'm actually cutting off the bottom. This one, I'm cutting down the side of it. So when I cut lengthwise, there's no nap that's necessarily hanging off this way. It's just the tiniest little bit. When it's this way, it's hanging off the bottom. So I've cut quite a bit off. All right. I will tell you, this is the easiest thing to just clean up as it goes. Do not let it get pressed into your board over and over again. If it's in your board, like you could see it just stayed there, but then I can swoop it off. If it's actually staying in your board, it's generally because you're pushing too hard and your blade is not sharp. So really change your blades often. It will make a huge difference in making sure that you're not destroying your board because you're pushing really hard. And it'll save your sanity because you're not going to have to try to scrub out Minky out of there. So for the Luxe Cuddle, it's a little bit different because you can see here how much of this nap, the fibers here, fall off the end. So when I cut this, I'm going to have a huge amount of mess that's just a lot of fluff already. So I know just looking at this, I don't want to cut this with a rotary cutter to have all that extra fibers floating around. Not fun. So I almost never will cut it with a rotary cutter. Instead, I will choose a pair of scissors or a blade. So we're going to talk about scissors just briefly. I have a few different ones that we're going to talk about. Okay. So the biggest thing here is micro serrated, and I'm going to grab these big guys too. because they are micro serrated. These big guys are my Kais and I love them, but they are way too big to be able to cut precise little curves on here. So these are for other projects. But these smaller ones are also all micro serrated. So these are the Femore ones. These are, I think they're called 6-inch comfort handle scissors. And they have, you can see the blade length. It's pretty short here. This one, these are the Karen K. Buckleys. The blades are a little bit longer on this one. These have soft handles. These have hard plastic handles. Okay, so that's a big difference there. These are the Olfa scissors. These are also micro serrated. They're a shorter blade, similar to the Femores, and also have the hard handles, but they are smaller handhold. Okay, so that's the real difference between them. They are all excellent scissors. They all have good micro serrated blades on them and will cut Cuddle. My favorite personally are the Karen K. Buckleys because they're the most comfortable in my hand because of these rubber handles. All right, so when I'm cutting this, I'm going to cut a little bit out with my scissors. I'm going to show you what I do. So really all I'm going to do is cut a little snip in here. If I'm cutting out something like this, I don't necessarily want to come in from the edge because I'm just going to cut a whole lot of fibers that don't need to be cut. I really only need to cut this part here. So I'm going to stick this under here. And what I do is I kind of pull it up off the table and then I cut just the backing as much as possible. So it's just little bitty snips, because as soon as I take a big snip, one, I have less control of the curve if I'm doing something like a stuffed animal. But the other is I'm much more likely to cut all the fibers underneath. So the same reason I wouldn't want to use those big scissors. All right, and if I do that, I can show you, I can pull that apart and there's nothing here. It's all going to be stuck on here. And I'll be able to pull some off, but it makes it for a much less messy cutting experience. Okay, the other tool that I really like for cutting is this, which is the Olfa SAC-1 blade. You'll see it referred to as a craft knife in most patterns. It is, I always like to describe it as basically it's a X-Acto knife got married to a box cutter and had a baby. This is what happened. So you get the really sharp point here of an X-Acto knife, but the snap-off blades of a box cutter. So you get these and it has a couple of blades in it that have, I think, 10 blades, 10 like little blades in here. And so it will last you for a long time. And then the blades, you can buy replacements for those. So they work really well. The key with this is to kind of hold some pressure against it, and then I just drag this along the back of it. And this one, I will say, it takes a little bit of practice to get it, and it will usually cut a little bit more. This is a brand new blade that I popped out of there last night, so I have to press it just a little bit softer. Okay, and then it will cut through less. So the fresh blade will always cut a little deeper than the other when it's been used a little bit. So there we go. Okay, so now you can see all of this. If I would have cut this out with a rotary cutter, it would have just left all of that mess all over my board. Instead, it's here. And then when I'm pinning it in the next section, I'll show you, we'll just push this back. We don't have to. You can totally leave it out. Either way. Okay, so you can see it's a lot less mess. This is going to be a fun, what is this? This is a llama face made out of cheetah. Is that what this is?
Leopard, maybe?
Leopard? Yeah. It'll be a fun one.
It's a mashup. Okay.
Yes, it definitely is. So as I said, you can get the mess off of here, but doing it this way, even if I have a little mess, I can clean it up like this. And it's all just very contained for me rather than floating everywhere. I will say that once when I was first beginning to come around to the front, when I was first sewing with Cuddle Fabrics and I decided to make I made the Wolf Abstractions quilt from Violet Craft, and it's a beautiful quilt, and I used a ton of different luxe cuddles on it and a couple of faux furs, and I hadn't been sewing with it for long enough to really have acquired some of these techniques, and so I was cutting it all with the rotary cutter, and then I decided it was really messy and I wanted to clean it up, so I blew on my board. And I will say it was probably the biggest mistake I ever made because that stuff floated for a week afterward. So really contain it from the very beginning. Keep it nice and neat. Just throw it away as you go. We did talk a little bit about the vacuum, and I'll show you the vacuum that I like the most here. So this is this is just a Black & Decker. It is just a great little vacuum. It blows out the end so it doesn't blow your Cuddle dust all over the place, which is really super important. A lot of them blow out the sides, and so then as soon as you start vacuuming, it just starts blowing everything everywhere. So this is a great one to use if you're going to work with Cuddle fairly often, and you can just kind of let it suck the Cuddle dust right off of the pieces. And then when you lose things into the vacuum, you just open it up and pull them out, because it will happen.
That never happens.
Not never.
What do you mean?
It happens almost every time. But it's fine. You just pull it out. Okay. Any questions about cutting it?
We have a recommendation for a new brand of micro serrated scissor.
Great.
Tim Holtz apparently makes a micro serrated scissor that has a great ergonomic handle. We are not familiar with that. And
yeah, I wonder who's making that.
We'll have to get those and see how they are.
Because that's going to absolutely, because that's a branded one. So and Tim Holtz stuff is great. So I would assume that they're probably made by one of the big guys that we already know. Yeah. Buy a good brand name scissor. I will say scissors can be expensive, and they are well worth the investment in them. I have had my Carrie K. Buckley's. I haven't bought, I think we found 4 pair this morning. I have a lot, but I haven't bought any in a couple of years, and they just have worked for a long time. I have a couple that are a little dull at the tip, but really they will last for years. They are very well worth the money to invest in your scissors to have better cutting experience. I will say this over and over again, is like really investing in tools makes a big difference in how happy you are with sewing, just in general, but especially when you're working with Cuddle. Okay, so let's talk about pinning. All right. That was the next segment, right? Yes. Yep. Okay. So now we are going to go ahead and work on pinning stuff. So come on over to the top camera and we'll talk about this. Pins are a big deal in my mind about which pins you use. And so we're going to talk about that just a little bit here. I'm putting this here just so you can kind of see. So I have a few different pins here that we're going to talk about so we can discuss the importance of pins. Okay. All right. So turn this around so you guys can see these a little bit better. Okay. So these are the clover flower head pins. So are these. What's the difference? These have a color on either side. They have like a red and a salmon color. This one is the same on both sides. That's not the only difference. These are the heavy duty ones, and these are the medium. So I think they're called heavyweight and medium weight. And they are different in that they bend more. So this is the medium weight, and you can see I can bend that pretty good right there. But I can't really bend that one. Okay, these are super strong. So that means these are really good for doing things like the luxe throws that you've got some heavy fabric and you need it to really stay. If you're pinning through numerous layers, these work really well. These work fine, but they will tend to bend if you're working through numerous layers. So I like these for strip quilts, throws, that sort of thing. These I'll use for stuffed animals and lots of just normal sewing. There's another brand out there. These are Taylor Seville, the Magic pins. And these are very similar to the medium weight clover. The clover ones are slightly longer needle, or the shaft is a little bit longer, but they are pretty much the same sharpness. The clover is a little bit sharper, and these are a little bendy. Okay, so they're similar in I think they were the same shaft width, like in the packaging, the 5.
Right.
Yeah, I think that they're both 5. So they're both a little bit bendy. This one, the Magic pins, I've noticed I've bent them more. So when I'm working with thicker fabrics, I'll go for the heavyweight. Okay, but they're totally fine pins. The clovers, that was interesting. I haven't tested the sharpness before, and they were definitely sharper. So yeah, this one looks very much like a clover flower head pin, except it is not. I don't know if you guys will be able to see, but you can see in here the shaft of the pin only goes up to here. And in this one, the shaft of the pin goes all the way up to here. So if you are like me and have ever been and pulled out a needle and tried to thread it and then realized it was a pin without its head, it was probably one of these that lost its head along the way, because they do. They will just, you know, lose their heads. So that's how easy that
Wow,
is.
that was a really good
Yeah,
demonstration.
right, because I can do that here and I can't break them off. Yeah, they're just really, really good at breaking off the heads. So that's why I really suggest the clover pins. They're my favorite. They are just nice and strong. You can buy the heavyweight in a box of 100, and that's the way to go. I had a little thing of the other pins here yesterday, and I put it so that I would have it. Oh, here it is. So this is how you buy the medium weight ones. They come in these little packs, and then the heavyweight ones come in the little plastic box. Okay, and then you can't see it, but the way that I like to store my pins is on these circles. And then I also have my little pin cushion here that Hawke was nice enough to color coordinate for me. Okay, but these circles are really great for being able to.
I have a problem.
Are really great for storing things. So anyway, that's how you're going to find the pins. These are 0.55, and I believe the heavyweights are 0.7 millimeters, and that is for the shaft width. So that tells you that it's a heavier pin. So you'll also find clover pins that are flower head pins that are blue, that is like a kind of a bright blue and a light blue, and those are fine. So those are like 0.35, and those will bend like crazy, but they're perfect if you're sewing something very fine, like a silk or lawn or something like that. So they won't leave a very big hole. So really having different pins is really important. It's something I hadn't considered as much before. So now that we have which pins we want to use, let's talk about how we pin it. I have certain ways that I like to pin things, and I will say that I've just taught it this way for a long time, so I like it, and it seems to work for me. You are welcome to try it and then not do it that way if you'd like. So what we talk about in either way, whether we're working with Luxe Cuddle or with a Cuddle 3, is that trying to keep it in control while you're sewing it is really important. One of the things that happens is that it likes to shove like this, and we'll talk about how to avoid that in other, like using the right foot. But that shove can be prevented if you're using pins, because you can't actually move it. So the way that I like to pin is parallel to the cut edge. And I will pin it about a ½ inch or a little bit less from the cut edge. And then I go back and I pin it a second time. And what that does is really gives us a nice firm hold. It's not going to go anywhere on me as I sew. Like it's just going to flatten down, which is great. Okay. So in all the patterns that you'll find that are the Shannon patterns, we always call it double pinning. You're going to double pin the edges. I know that some people will pin, because they don't like so many pins, and they will use wonder clips along here. But I find I like wonder clips for certain things, but for this isn't my favorite because they don't tend to hold super tight. So this is another way that I've seen people do it, though. And I know a couple of the brand or the Cuddle ambassadors use this technique, but really the idea is to hold it down here where you're going to sew, but the pins will hold it so it can't move. If you only do the clips, you still have all sorts of movement here. So this can move like, yeah, crazy. And so the two of them are not going to stay together, whereas the pinning will actually keep it so that they're not going to move apart from each other. I can't get them to do that where it's pinned. Okay. So same thing goes when you're working with just a C3, is that we're going to pin it this way. Oops, I'll pin it a little closer. And I definitely have my own ways of pinning that yeah. What do you say? It's always like magic or something. I can't remember what you say, Hawke. That like my pinning.
Oh, I mean, your hand movements are so precise because you've gotten so used to showing folks on camera, especially,
right,
that it almost doesn't seem real. And
yeah.
when I try to pin like she pins, I look like an octopus.
So I will say it makes a big difference with the pins that you use too, because if you're using pins that are not very sharp, I have to work with it a lot more. Okay, so here's another one of the not great flower heads. and they don't work, they don't slide through as nicely. So even if I'm like, yeah, see, it just catches. So it isn't necessarily just about my hand motion, and I've definitely done a lot of pinning, but I will say that the clover pins just slide through. And it really, of anything I can recommend replacing probably in your sewing studio would be pins, because people will get a little bit, I don't know, kind of crazy. Well, I've had these pins forever. They were my grandma's pins. Well, there's a reason that they made new pins, and this is one of them, is that you should use different pins. There are, you should use better pins. There are these little pins. These are also from Clover. These are glass head pins, which I really like for other things, but they don't work very well for here because they're so fine. And you can see that if you were, for example, making this into something where we had to top stitch, I can put these in here and then just completely lose them. So they'll just go bye-bye, which then means you have to find them the painful way of squeezing until you find them. Whereas these flower head pins, I can still see them popping up there. All right. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see, but there's a pin right next to it. But it just completely buries in there. All right. So being smart about which pins you're using for which purpose makes it a lot easier to do. So as much as people are like, you pin so well, I'm like, part of it really is my pins. One of it is practice, but the other is just a good quality pin that will let this slide right through. Then when we sew this, we'll sew along here. I was going to say something else about the pins. Oh, there's also, so Magic makes, the people who make the Magic pins make another one, which is this guy here. And these are a little easier to grab. They have this fun grab end, which is really nice. And these go through here pretty well, but they tend to bend a lot. Okay, so literally I can just bend it, and that's not really helpful. Okay, so having so having pins that are strong that I can't bend is very helpful, because when you're sewing through a lot of layers, and especially like if you're doing a strip quilt, and you've got numerous layers, and I want to be able to pin through all of this, I need it to come back up, down, and through. And something like this, I'm going to have really, like, it doesn't want to come back up. Yeah, and then it just bends. Where these pins, because they're so strong, they don't bend. I can just stab them down and then pick it back up. All right, so there's my lesson on pins. Pins are super important, and I think a lot of people don't realize how critical they actually are. So, okay, so Clover is my favorite, absolutely, and the heavyweight pins are the best. All right, so now that we know how to pin it, or we know how to cut it and we know how to pin it, and then we can talk about sewing it. All right, sewing it is the place where it becomes a problem, because it is moving, and because it's a knit, it has some pliability and some movement to it, and it will kind of, get away from you if you're not careful. That's really where the pinning comes into place, is that really holds it where we want to sew it. And I always try to pin the most important places first. So if there's intersections or that sort of thing, or markings that these two need to match, I'll pin those first. We pin the ends, the middle, and then in between generally. So those important parts to match is where we pin first. Once we've done that, we can sew it. It is really important to use a walking foot or similar device so that you can sew it properly. So, Audrey, can you throw up the banner about sewing? There we go. So when you're sewing with it, you can use just about any machine. All right. We did a Sew Together Tuesday episode way back in 2020, I think. Is that right? It was when we were in LA and upstairs, and we did a little comparison, and I should have gotten that video and put it up here. It is out there. So if you look for comparison, Cuddle, sewing machine, Sew Together Tuesday, or my name, you will find it. And it was a very fun comparison to do. And we compared a featherweight and a small Janome, and the Baby Lock Crescendo and a Bernina machine, right? I think that's what we did. And I compared the walking foot on the different machines and the digital dual feed on the Baby Lock. And we were able to make it work for all of them. So even the featherweight could sew the little strip quilt, and it could do just regular sewing as long as you had a walking foot. So there's a lot of like different things that they've done with walking feet and machines and getting them to feed properly. So we'll talk a little bit about different machines. If you have questions, pop them up in there, because there are a lot of different ways of doing it. So this is just a standard little walking foot. Okay, this is what they generally look like. This little guy will go over your needle screw. This one goes around the shank, pops in there, and then as your needle goes up and down, this whole foot comes up off the fabric. So that's the whole point of this. I would say the biggest mistake that I see people make in classes is that this doesn't go around the needle screw. It's just sitting there, which means that when you're using it, it doesn't actually lift up like it needs to do, because it should be walking and doing this sort of a thing. Okay. It also has little grippy bits down here. These are the white that are sticking out here. They are just a little bit grippy. So they have, little bits cut in them so that they're grippy. I have definitely seen new walking feet that are a little too grippy. So if you are having trouble with your walking foot grabbing your fabric, there are a few different ways of doing it, and I've definitely seen people just kind of sand them down a little bit with an emery board and get off the sharp edge, because they will sometimes want to grab the back of your fabric, which is frustrating for one, but also not what you want if you were sewing with something that could snag easily. So that's a problem. But generally a walking foot is really good. You can buy them that are somewhat generic that'll work for like the featherweights. And this is the one that I use for that. But otherwise, I would really suggest that you look for a walking foot that is made for your machine and your machine brand. So at least start with the brand, and then sometimes they get very specific as to which machines they will work with. It's better to go more specific, pay a little bit more, and get the walking foot that will work for your machine really well than to struggle with one that isn't quite working. There's a lot of frustration with that. Thank you. So that's a regular walking foot. With the Baby Lock and Brother machines, they have a digital dual feed, or what's the other word they call for it? A move it foot. A move it foot. And so that's the way this worked. This is off my Baby Lock. This is the newer one that is shorter. So the older one that I had on the Crescendo was probably a half an inch taller. It was quite a bit bigger. This one is a lot smaller, and yeah, it works really, really well. This works with a belt. So there's a little belt that's in here. I took off the foot, so that's why you can't, it doesn't make any sense right now. But there's a little belt here, and that grabs the fabric and pulls that through. So it's the same sort of idea, but it doesn't use the grippy thing like this. It just uses the rubber to grab the fabric and bring it through. I really love this. I really recommend them if you are using a Baby Lock or Brother machine. One of the things that I like about this a lot is that they have different feet. So this is actually like a stitch in the ditch foot that I have. I also have the open toe foot, and I have a closed toe foot. So depending on this is the standard that comes with it. So depending on what you're using it for, it can be really, really helpful. And then these just pop on there. All right. The one thing I will tell you, if you have one of these, is to make sure you actually plug the little guy in. So I have been known to try to sew with it and can't figure out why it's not moving through very well, and changing my stitch length and all sort of things. And then, I realized that I just didn't plug it in and make it work. So, all right. So the other thing that you can sew with is just a standard foot. The standard foot is a problem because it doesn't move through. It just pushes against it. The only thing you can do with that is really to lessen the presser foot a lot, but then you have less control. So I really recommend against using a standard presser foot unless you're doing stuffed animals. And then we almost always use a 1/4 inch seam allowance for that. So using your regular foot or a 1/4 inch foot is really helpful. Those seams are small, so it means that you don't have as much shove. You're not trying to go across an entire 60 inches. You're usually going, in a 3-inch section or maybe a 6-inch section. So the push can't get out of control with that. And you have more control of it underneath your foot with a 1/4 inch seam. So there's that. So that's what I have on the machine right now, because I was sewing little stuffed animals. So I'm going to take that off now and put on my digital dual feed, and we'll get that set up so I can show you a little bit about sewing with him. Turn that light on so I can see. Sorry, my arm's just in the way right now. Okay, so I've got that on there. Then I'm gonna use my little tool here to tighten that. That's something that I'd gotten lazy. I'm now not as lazy about tightening it up with the little screwdriver, just because it really does make it work so much better. Okay, so you can see it's an easy little change on here. Bernina has a walking foot that you can put on. It also has an even feed, and Janome and Elna's have an acu feed, I believe they call it. And all of those work well. I will say that the Elna and Janome AccuFeed works the best of any that integrates with your foot. If you're using a Bernina, I still recommend that you get a walking foot, just because it will work a lot better. All right, so now we've got this little contraption on the machine, and now we're going to sew with it. So there's a couple of things to remember, and one of them is thread. So I have this already sewn, you can see, and this one is sewn with a cotton thread, Coates and Clark, which is too bad. It's a good name, but you know, it's not very good thread for sewing with Cuddle. So we always want to use a polyester thread, and I'll show you why in just a second here. So I've got the polyester thread in there, top and bobbin. Yeah. And then I've got a 90-14 stretch needle in here. So that's really important. We want a stronger needle, and we want it to be for a stretch fabric, because this is a stretchy fabric. I can't tell you exactly what the difference is. If you get a chance to listen to Rhonda Pierce do her presentation on needles, it's very interesting, and there's more about needles than I ever knew. I know part of it is that the scarf in the back is larger and the eye is a little bit bigger, and it does make it sew better with Cuddle, and it will make it skip stitches less, which is super important. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this. I recommend using a 3 or a 3.5 stitch length for almost everything. So I'm going to do a little bit of both here. So we'll do 3, and you can see it just kind of works itself through here just fine. This is just 2 layers of Cuddle 3. So then we're going to do a 3.5. And then when we're doing a zigzag, I will often recommend that we do a 4-4 or a 5-5. This will be a 4-4 zigzag, and then we'll do a 5-5, just so you can see what the difference is between them. Okay, and then I'll show you how to do it with Luxe Cuddle as well. All right, so there's our stitches. So let's go over to the top camera so we can show it there. All right, so here I've got this is my polyester thread. Let me see if I can bring this up so you guys can see it all. These are nice big stitches. Let's see if I can see them. You can see them a little bit better down here. So these are nice. I always say it should look like good top stitching. It shouldn't be super tiny. So that's why we go with the 3. And then this is a 3.5. Then this is a 4mm zigzag and a 5mm zigzag. All right. So you can see the difference. Try your machine at 3. If it's not moving through very easily, move it up to a 3.5. If it's still giving you trouble, move it up to a 4, just your presser foot. There's lots of tips on how to deal with that. What I want to show you too here is if I pull this is my straight stitch, and this is the polyester. So this is a straight, it doesn't have any give to it. The zigzag, you can see it has like the little bumps in it, and that's because it has a lot of give, right? It will stretch. That's why we a lot of times use them for things that are stretchy. And people always ask me, do you have to use a zigzag with it? You don't. This is a straight stitch, and it's totally fine. But this is all the polyester thread. This is the cotton thread. Let's see if it'll, yeah. And if I give it a good stretch, it tends to pop. So that's what happens when people, when kids will step on it and then they grab their blanket and then it pops. And so we want to avoid those pop stitches by using something like a polyester. Okay.
I always say the problem lies in the fact that the cotton thread sews just fine.
It does. It sews just fine.
It looks great as soon as it's through the machine, but as soon as you hand it to a little and they give it a tug, now you're going to have to hand stitch it to get it back together again.
Yep. You can see it has lots of give still. So even though it's straight stitch, there's lots of give still in the fabric. Okay. Totally stuck here. So a lot of times people think like, oh, the stitch is too big, it won't hold it. Totally not true. Okay. Works totally fine. All right, that's the biggest thing about stitching. So making sure that you use a polyester thread, use a 9014 stretch needle, and the right kind of, oh, that's not the right one. I had the right one out. Here we go. So this is what comes from teaching. I have a lot of needles. I'm never going to run out of stretch needles. So I love it. But these are the ones that I recommend, and they're the ones that work best, a 9014. So you can use an 8012, but if you're going through more layers of fabric, the 9014 is best. So I suggest that you invest in those. There's always a question of, can I use a stretch needle or jersey needle, a regular needle, universal needle? And really, the stretch needle is the one that is most recommended. And it's a little bit different than the others. So that's the one I recommend. Any questions there? Okay. What was that? No? Okay.
There we go.
Are there any questions there? All right. So if not, then let's talk about the next thing, which is, where do you go to get more information? What do you make with this stuff? So now that you know some of the basics about working with it, there is a ton of resources out there. Shannon Fabrics has developed over the years that I was with the company, and well, still kind of with the company, but it has continued, and that education program has developed into a very large system that has a lot of resources for you. So Shannon Fabrics deals with Minky Fabrics, Cuddle Fabrics, and so their educational stuff is based on that. And I will say that they have a large number of Cuddle ambassadors. I think there's about 26, 28 of us who know what we're talking about with Cuddle, because that's what we do. We sew it a lot. So those people are available. They teach. You can find classes online. You can find patterns. You can find tip sheets. So if you got the show notes, there are a ton of tip sheets. Let me show you these, because these are actually something that's very helpful. And if you are a store, oh no, here they are. If you're a store owner, you can get these from Shannon Fabrics. Okay. So in any kit, you should get one of these guys. That's Cuddle Basics, that talks about the different tools that you need and information about it. One thing that we didn't talk is once you've sewn it, how do you wash it? And that's really important. So washing it, you should wash it in cold water, no fabric softener, in your laundry detergent, which is pretty common these days. So make sure that you don't have any fabric softener in your laundry detergent. And then we really recommend that you line dry it, or you dry it just a little bit, line dry it, and then you can toss it to kind of fluff it back up again. If you have hard water, you'll need to adjust that, getting a water softener, softening stuff that you can put in the water, from what I understand, because that tends to, the minerals that are in hard water will tend to cling to the fabric and make it not as soft as quickly. So otherwise, Cuddle, if you treat it well, it will last for decades and be just as soft as when you started. So the big thing is to avoid fabric softeners or anything that kind of sticks to the fibers themselves. Okay, so this is a great one. This is available online. You should, if you got it from me, I included this one in the handout that you can get on Crinkle Dreams. Is all about Cuddle 3, the different types, or Cuddle and all the different types of Cuddle. So Cuddle 3, Cuddle 390, which is 90-inch wide Cuddle, Luxe Cuddle, Cuddle Dimple, and Cloud Cuddle, which are all different kinds and of different Cuddle that you can use for all sorts of different projects. So there's, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different kinds, and they all work for different things. The tip sheets that I want you to know about are available on the Shannon Fabrics website. And if you go to the Learning Center, you can find all of these different tip sheets that basically is a distillation of all of the things that we have learned over the years about working with Cuddle in different ways. So there's one on quilting Cuddle on a long arm, appliquing, which we'll talk about in just a second, self-binding your quilt with Cuddle, which you might recognize the picture there. That's the quilt. I really do love it. How to work with Cloud Cuddle, and machine embroidery, and quilting Cuddle on your home machine. So there's lots and lots of information out there that is available for you. So I like to remind people that you don't have to try to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to try to figure it out yourself and do all the different things and see, well, would this work and would this work? We've got to figure it out. There's lots of different ways to do things here with Cuddle that people have already kind of figured out. So learn from Learn from the professionals. And visit the shannonfabrics.com website. There's also a product that came out a few years ago that I've seen in a couple stores, and I believe Red Roxy Quilt Co. in Decorah, Iowa had a few when I recently looked, and it is the beginner box, and it comes with this little book, and it has some projects in it, and these are some basic projects. So if you are new to sewing with Cuddle, look for the Shannon Fabrics beginner box. There are a few out there still, and they're a great way. They come with 3 different yards of fabric, a solid cuddle, a print cuddle, and a luxe cuddle, and it really lets you kind of just explore a little bit how to work with Cuddle fabrics. So there's that. So there's lots of resources for information. Also on the show notes, I have a long list of Cuddle-friendly pattern manufacturers or makers, including some of these are brand ambassadors. So you know that they're actually very good quality stuff. They know what they're doing when it comes to working with Cuddle. And that I think is really helpful because sometimes people just make it up. So you'll find a list there. I'm going to read them off just in case you haven't gotten it. And we don't have all of them there, and that's totally fine, Hawke. So we're just going to list some of them that we have. But, okay, so for embroidery, people I recommend would be Creative Appliques, Designs by Baby Moon, Embroidery Garden, and TKF Designs. So all of those people are brand ambassadors or Cuddle ambassadors who work with Cuddle. I wouldn't say exclusively, but a lot. Okay. And then the other one that I really like for embroidery is Parker on the Porch, which we did a show with her a few years ago, and her stuff is just super fun. And she uses a lot of Cuddle, so she knows what she's doing there.
That's all in the hoop.
It's all, yeah. Yep. And then lots of things in the hoop. That's, yeah, that little stuffed bag. And we'll show some more. Stuffed animals, I recommend Funky Friends Factory, Melly and Me, Rustic Horseshoe, So Desanu, just Trolley Knight, and Chase and Charlie. And Chase and Charlie is also a Cuddle ambassador. Apparel, we've got Call Agere, and in finished goods, there's Grandma's, Comfy Closet, Mountain Minky, which is, and Why Not Sew. And all 3 of those are Cuddle ambassadors. So if you are not wanting to sew with the Cuddle yourself, you can absolutely find people who have sewn it for you, and then you can just buy it. And that's absolutely doable too. Okay, so we can talk about some of these other samples. So do you want to pass over the other ones too? So this is a darling little one-armed bat guy. I'm not even sure what it was supposed to be originally. I bought the pattern.
It's a dragon.
It's a dragon. There we go. Thanks. I bought the pattern from Trolley Knight from Se Desanu, and they are fabulous. So I love them. I bought the embroidery eyes so that I could do that, and I love the way it turned out. The funny story, we were talking about this the other day, is I cut these pieces out before we moved this last year, and I lost one piece of the arm. So I only had one side of the arm, and I had it for a while, and I was going to put it together, and I couldn't because I didn't have that other side, and I was trying to find it, and I never could find it. So finally I threw away the piece that I had and sewed them together with one arm, and then I immediately found the piece that I was missing. So he's still stuck with just one arm, but he's really cute. So he's a one-arm bandit. This is a little project from Rustic Horseshoe. She's got a ton of stuffed animals that I've done a bunch of tutorials for that you can find that are super cute. This is with Cuddle Dimple, which we haven't talked much about. It's one that people tend to reach for first, and it's actually one of the more difficult ones to sew with because it has a lot of stretch in the texture, but it makes some really cute things like this little cactus, and we've also got more Rustic Horseshoe. We actually have a lot of Rustic Horseshoe samples. So I love, this is the big dragon. So maybe I have a thing for dragons that I didn't realize. I clearly have a thing for green. Here's another one that she did this last year. I love these guys. They're so much fun. So this is great. And then you did give me the lamb. And then this is a little lamb from a Funky Friends Factory, which her patterns are designed for cotton, and they'll always show cotton on the front, but they are really super sweet in Cuddle fabrics. So make sure you don't just pass them up. And if you look on the playlist that we have on our YouTube, I have put in there some of the tutorials that we did for a bunch of these. So a lot of them, if I have a sample, I've probably done something with it. Okay, so there's a couple other things over there. The one little bag. And then we'll talk about the love language pillow. So this is another one. This one, I believe, is also Parker on the Porch. another sparkle. And these are really fun. I'm always just amazed at what you can put together in the hoop, because while I can do embroidery, I'm not great at embroidery. And I'm always just amazed. So the other thing I wanted to show you is that there's these cute sort of projects. What did I do with the little blanket?
This guy?
Yes, that one. There we go. So the other thing that you can do with the embroidery is to do monogramming, which is really big with a lot of people, and they really like it. I asked Sheila from Designs by Baby Moon if she would do one for me to showcase how well this does embroidery. And so she put my initials on there, which is really cute. And there's a ton of information that you can get from her if you follow her. And like I said, Creative Appliques, Embroidery Gardens, all those people, they know what they're talking about, and they can lead you through. If you look at their blogs and stuff like that, they've shown different ways of doing it. There's something in embroidery called the knockdown stitch that's really important when you work with Cuddle. So I'd suggest that you look at that, but I'm going to show you close. You can see the outline around the letters. That's kind of the knockdown stitch that's done first, and then the letters are embroidered on top of it, which makes it really stand out on this Luxe Cuddle, that you really don't notice the white so much around it, but it does make those letters stand out really well. So there's some techniques, you'll find these in the tutorial sheets as well, that make it work super duper well. And like I said, you don't have to try to figure this out yourself. There's lots of explanation and examples for it. All right, so let's talk about the love language pillow. And I will do a little bit of sewing with that one. Would you hand that to me? I don't have very much space to throw things over here. All right. So this is the love language pillow. Thank you. Okay. So this is a new pattern that I just put out. I designed it last year for another project, and then I decided to rewrite it and release it for this month's pattern. So this is made with Cuddle. The whole thing is made with Cuddle, and it is quilted on the front and back. And then it has these little appliques on it. So the applique, this is the project that I wanted to show. Each month in our Dream Team community, one of the perks of being a member is that you get a free pattern every month. So this was the free pattern. It's available for purchase on the website, crinkledreams.com. And but as the members, they got it for free. And I wanted to really teach how to do applique with Cuddle, because it's so much fun. It adds so much texture to things. So while I like to do it with Cuddle on Cuddle, that works really well. It doesn't have to be. You can absolutely do it with a cotton backing if you are new to it. So I would recommend that you give that a shot. And this is an easy way of doing it. So I was looking, I had a piece of batting in here, and now it's missing. Okay, so it's okay.
I don't see it either.
It's okay. All right, so I'm going to move things over, and we can come over to the top camera, and I'll show you how I do this and how you can do it too. Okay, let me move all my little things here. All right, so this is some other fun fabric that is a new fabric that's coming out for Valentine's. I think it's available in stores now. And then I have, let me turn this around so it's the right way for you guys. Okay, and this is cut out to be the size of the pillow. I'm not going to measure this carefully because it's not what I'm doing today. But I wanted to show you kind of how we do this. So this is the piece that I put together, has a speech bubble and the heart. Okay, I put SF101, which is just a woven fusible interfacing on the back of this. Yes, you can iron it, absolutely. And so I ironed this on the back, cut it out, follow the instructions. It'll tell you how to do all of this. And then we're going to plop this on there. And I'm going to try to find my little glue stick. So this is one of my favorite new tools that came out in the last year. The OD 505 basting spray is fabulous, and I absolutely love it. This stuff is great for little things like this, where the spray becomes more of an issue because it has to go other places. This little guy works really well for things like this because I can just put the glue right on the back. I'm just going to put it down here just a little bit. Put it where I want it. I say it's going to go about there. I just give it, what does Jackie call it? The cuddle smackdown?
Yes.
And I'm just going to press that really good. All right. All right. So then I'm going to take some topper that's used in embroidery. You can use water soluble. I think this might be the heat one. Actually, you can either, it doesn't really matter because we're just going to pull it off. We're not going to use either technique to get it off. We're going to pull it off. So then we're
going to treat it all like tearaway.
It's just all tearaway to me. So normally I would have batting behind this because I would have quilted it. But I want to show you a couple things. Oh, you know what we didn't talk about yet? The other tool that we need that we're totally going to do when we sew. Stiletto. Okay, so I'm going to show you how we use this. So I'm going to come on over to the machine and we're going to sew around this. And I'm going to change it to a blanket stitch. And it's actually, the one that I do is a quilting applique stitch is what I often do. I'm going to do this in the black thread because I'm not going to change it for a couple reasons. One is I want you to be able to see it. All right. So I'm going to start here and do a little lock stitch. And what I'm trying to do is to get it so that my needle comes down right next to this. So strangely, and this is something that I really learned after trying it several different ways, is using the topper, even if I'm not using it to try to keep this nap in place, because this nap is just going to stay where it is. It's only the Cuddle 3. So it's not going to get all wild. This helps me see the edge. And I don't know why, but other students have said the same thing for them, is that it helps them see this edge by having the topper on it. So I'm just going to stitch around this a little bit. And what this does is it goes straight stitch and then it goes over to the left. And we want that straight stitch to come right off the edge and then over onto the fabric. And I will say that I would do better if I had my open toe foot on here, because I'm just kind of having to guess a little bit where that is. So the open toe foot is really helpful for this. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch it over to a zigzag so you can see that, how that looks. Because one of the things I never do is sew anything that's going to be usable later. I'm always trying things. So I'm going to do the same thing where I want the zigzag to go on and then just right off the fabric. Okay, and I can use my little stiletto here to kind of keep things under control and guide it through. You'll notice that I'll use it quite often. Okay, so just stitching around this and kind of watching where it goes. A lot of times when I'm sewing, I'll try to turn my machine down so that it's like at a medium speed, so I can't go too fast. So you can see, here's my little zigzag. Knock that up for you a little bit. Okay, and then here's my little blanket stitch. All right, can you see that okay? Should we move to the top one?
I think that looks really good from our end.
Okay, good. So now if I had gone around the whole thing, then I would go ahead and take this off. I'm going to pretend like we did, because we don't need to. And then all we do is kind of tear this up. I didn't lock my stitch there, so it wants to pull.
I finally have a banner that shows the product link.
Oh, good. Thank you.
This. I'm going to show it now. There we go.
Okay.
Love language pillow.
There we go. There we go.
And then I'm going to post it in the chat.
Okay, so here I can see I got a little bit further off. So this is one, but this is what's interesting. So I can see my black thread here where I accidentally got off a little further away than I should have, right? And then there's plastic in there. This will be one of those things that makes me a little crazy. The heat one will tears less easily than the water soluble, just FYI. So if you're going to get one, I always recommend the water soluble. But if you look here, I can't even see these stitches on the red. I cannot see the black on the red. So this would be a circumstance where I might be really prone to sewing this with a white thread because it won't show here and it won't show here because of the nap. Okay, so thread choice, a lot of times I just sew with a gray thread, but when it comes to what is it going to show on, a lot of times I'll pick depending on what this fabric is, because the red would show really well on here as well, but the black doesn't even show in here, and white certainly wouldn't either. And white, even if it did show, it would be fine because we've got white there. So same thing here. We've got the zigzags, and those show a little bit more. So I'm generally less prone to doing zigzag on things than I used to be because it's harder to control it. So I really like doing the applique stitch is what this is, or a blanket stitch, and doing a serpentine, which we wouldn't do on here, but I'll do a serpentine a lot of times instead of a zigzag. So yes.
We have a couple of related questions. Can we go back briefly to the glue stick and also Odif 505 spray as well? So Odif makes both products.
Correct.
And both of them are temporary.
Yes, they are temporary.
They wash out. They work really well in the moment.
Yes.
Now, are there any other kind of glue sticks? Are we able to just use like regular, like, you know, sort of crafty glue sticks?
People can and do. I know a lot of people buying their quilt just using Elmer's glue, but I don't love that.
The washout seems like it ends up with a better result at the end.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So I just stick with the product that it's, I tend to go with the product that is made for that. People will often say that it doesn't matter, it's the exact same thing. I don't know that that's true. They're not the one manufacturing it. So I don't always know if that's actually true, but I know that this, like, they will stand by the fact that this will wash out and it's a temporary adhesive made for fabric. So I'll go with that.
That sounds right with me. Okay.
Yeah.
Back to the topper.
Okay.
Do you have to use the topper? And if you don't have topper, what are your likely results?
Okay, so the reason that I want to use the topper when I'm doing applique on things is really because it will control the nap. So if you're using something that is a luxe cuddle and you've got that fur hanging over the edge, I can push that back and the topper will keep it in position so I can see it clearly. The other is that I can actually just see that edge more clearly with the topper on there. And I'm not sure why that's true, but I've tested it out with students and they say the same thing. If you don't have topper, it's not a huge deal. In embroidery, it'll cause more of a problem that the stitches will sink in too much into the nap of the fabrics and you won't really see it. So when you are doing the embroidery, it's more important to use a topper just because you have more stitches and you want them to sit on top of the nap a little bit more. I'm not sure if any of our embroidery friends are here, but they will be able to explain it better. So in embroidery, the topper is much more important and it will make a big difference. We did one a while ago. I think there's actually a short on the Shannon Fabrics YouTube that shows it where I did a little embroidery with my initials because they're kind of skinny letters like the T and the L. They just disappeared without doing the topper, which held down more of the fibers. This is especially important on the luxe cuddles. So on the Cuddle 3, it's not as important because the cuddle nap isn't as thick, but on the longer stuff, I mean, the nap is 10 or 15 millimeters deep. It can really hide your stitches. So it's more of it's a look that you're going for, and that's why you use the topper. It's not necessarily a quality. It's not going to hold better because you use the topper, but it will look better because you use the topper. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Refresher on what brands of topper you recommend, and we're specifically, even though you were using probably heat
yes,
right?
Yeah. So this one is because I grabbed it I just needed something out of the drawer, and I grabbed the one that was the top one on there. So I always leave the little paper that's there so I know what it is. So this is Heat and Gone from Floriani, which is a heat removable topper and stabilizer. The other one that I use a lot, if you look in the drawer behind you, you might see it. It's the Sulky version, and it comes like in a little plastic tube. It has a blue label, I believe, and that's usually the one that I use because it's really easy to find. So a lot of quilt shops will have it, and it's really nice and thin. So if you want to give me one of the packages that's up at the top with the kit thing with and I'll show you what it looks like. So this is the Sulky brand, which is SULKY. And this is the So it's just this clear, this is the tearaway or the water soluble version, and it's thinner and it tears easier. It's got lots of like not perforation stuff, but it's got little, I don't know, tears easily.
Check out that great the great tip from Leanne. Put up
if you don't have a top or a dry cleaning bag, oh, because it's really, they're really thin. Yeah, we'll work in a pinch.
And we're just trying to tear away. So
right. So if it's just something that needs to be there, and then you can go ahead and, like I was doing, you can just kind of pick it out with the stiletto and pull those little plastic bits out. Okay. So yeah, it's not critical, but it is helpful. That's really what it is. And Sulky is the brand that I tend to buy. And I have a variety of Floriani stuff that they sent me that I can try out for different things. So it's nice to have the heat one. I remember, I think it was Sheila who told me that the heat one is good if you're trying to keep the fibers out of the way, because it doesn't disappear in the wash, that it would disappear in the dryer, but it keeps the stuff down a little better. Could be getting that wrong. Sheila, tell me. But I'm pretty sure that's what it was. The water soluble is what I like the most. So that's what I included in the kit. So we do have a couple of kits, a handful of kits that are available for the love language pillow that will give you the speech bubble fabric. So that's what this was. It'll give you the speech bubble fabric and the topper so that you can use that. And that way you can use whatever fabric you want for the body of the pillow. So you could use, you know, like in the sample that I made, I used the baby pink Cuddle 3. In this other one, I'm using one of the cute little Valentine prints. You could use a cotton fabric that you loved, whatever you want. But then I cut up small bits that you can make the speech pillows out, or the speech bubbles out of, because it's just a small amount of Cuddle that you might not want to buy half a yard of each to try it out. So I would encourage you, if you haven't worked with Cuddle, to give this a try, because this is a really easy way of doing it. The other would be to pick up an infinity scarf kit from your local quilt shop and put that together, because that really is super easy. And there are, I think I did 3 or 4 tutorials for that one. It's a really easy project. So it's one that will get the Cuddle under your needle. And like I said, start with a small project and then kind of go from there. As you start to work with it, you'll realize that there's 1,000,001 things that you can make with this stuff. And we didn't get into it here, but if you watch the Cuddle showcase that they do, Shannon Fabrics does once a month. I believe it's the first Tuesday of the month. It might be the second. I think it's first. So check out the Shannon Fabrics Facebook page and then their YouTube, and they do a live every month where they talk about the new fabrics. And so they will introduce new fabrics, and Julie is the general manager, and she's incredibly smart about how the fabrics are made and all the different stuff that goes into the fabric, and how they create the different designs in them and the coloring and all of this sort of stuff. So I really recommend that you watch that to learn more about it. Like I said, visit the Shannon Fabrics website and make sure that you watch their tutorials as well. They do a live once a month called Sew Together Live that is with other Cuddle ambassadors, and they are showing off different things. I know Rin is doing it. Did it yesterday? I can't remember now. Sorry. I should have looked that up, but Rin did one on applique this month. So, and she does applique all the time.
Rin,
so,
you're in here.
Is Rin in here?
Yeah.
Rin, when did you do it? Did you do it? Is it next week? Did you just do it yesterday? I think it might be next week. But she'll be doing all about applique, and she's very skilled at it because that's what she does. And she makes pillows a lot of times with applique and stuff, and makes really adorable stuff. So if you can check that out. Also, the I Love Cuddle Fabric page on Facebook is great. We've got the Make with Teresa Coates on Facebook, a Facebook group there as well. I would really, I'd love for you to join. And we need to subscribe. And then what was the other thing we were going to tell them? Well, we should probably do our giveaways.
I think it's time to do giveaways.
Let's do some giveaways.
I haven't even begun
to. So
yeah,
Hawke's going to find.
For a minute, and I'm gonna
Hawke's going to pick 3 winners. What we have 3 different things. So Shannon Fabrics joined up with me, and they're going to give away a 2-yard cut of fabric. I'm going to give away a love language pillow kit, including the pattern and the body fabric. And then we had, what was the other thing? Oh, and then I have a new thing coming out. So I'm doing a variety of stuffed animal kits because I love making stuffed animals. And I know that not having the right fabrics really can stop people from doing it, and they don't want to buy all the different fabrics for the things. So I have some. Let me grab this really quick. So this is a little one that I made recently. This is the Raindrop Ragdoll Bear from Rustic Horseshoe. I think he is just the cutest dang thing. And I'm making one out of Luxe Cuddle too. But what I'm giving away is a kit to make this little guy out of these fabrics. So there are 3 different kits or 3 different packages that you can win. So Hawke will choose winners, and then I will have you email me and tell me which one you would like. So do you want to make the pillow? Do you want to make the little stuffed animal? Or do you want some yardage? So if you're new, I would say go with the love language pillow. If you've been working on some things, we want to try out a new stuffed animal. There you go. And if you're experienced with cuddle and you're like, please give me all the cuddle, go for the 2-yard cut. Okay. So that's the way we're going to differentiate that. In the kit, you get the different fabric bits cut. So there'll just be a small bit for his nose, for his muzzle, for the body, and then you get the eyes. So that's what comes in those kits. And I will have more animal kits coming. I've got some Nutty Nags, some Puppy Dog Pete's, I think a Blissful Bovine. So I've got a bunch of stuffed animals coming. I love making the stuffed animals, and what I really want is to get people to make them more. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. All right. Do we have any winners? Okay. I have to take a little drink because my throat's getting sore. There's a lot of talking. More talking than I've done in a while. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So now we've got winners. All right. There we go. Yay. Today's winners are Gloria Margolis. I've seen your name a lot. So, hey, Gloria. Debbie Roseman and Glenn Camden. So please email hawke@crinkledreams.com and tell them which prize you want, where to ship it, and a phone number. We need all of those things to be able to get it. So please don't forget to include a phone number. We're not going to call you, but the shipping needs a phone number, or they don't want to do it. So there we go. So congratulations. Thank you so much. We will be back in a month. We'll be back February 5th, I think. Each month we're going to do this. We're going to have a make episode, and it will do kind of a deep dive like we did today about a different topic and talking about different ways of doing things, different tools that are available, the pros and cons of different ones, and all of this sort of stuff. So next month, we're going to talk about foundation paper piecing, and we're going to talk about how you can get started doing that. So if you've never tackled it, you're like, I don't know what this is. This will be the episode for you. We're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about some different ways of doing it. So not just sewing through the paper, but there's different ways with freezer paper and with leave-in papers and all sorts of things. So we'll tackle all of that next month. We'll talk about it. I'll show a whole bunch of paper piecing patterns that I like. Yes, you can do it with Cuddle if you are so inclined. And we'll have a new pattern out available for that. So I am looking forward to it. So we'll be back then. And then each month we will do a little deep dive into a different sewing topic. So if there's something that you would like to see and that you would like to know more about, please let me know. You can leave a note for me on the Facebook group, email me. If you're part of the Dream Team community, you can just send me a direct message through there. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. I really want to tackle all the things that you want to learn how to tackle. So,
can you do foundation paper piecing with Cuddle?
Yes. Yes. Yes, you can.
That was a great question that came through.
Yes.
That's a
Absolutely.
crossover question.
Yes. So I have done a few of them. And if you look at pictures from Shannon Fabrics Facebook, or yeah, the Facebook from Market this year, they had 2 quilts that were there that were foundation paper pieced with Cuddle fabric. So, and then like I said, I had done the Violet Craft one. We actually did a show with it, Sew Together Tuesday, a few years ago with foundation paper piecing with Cuddle. So there's lots of possibilities, and that's a whole other technique in the foundation paper piecing because you're not going to sew through the paper either. So we will talk about all of that, all the different ways that you can do it, how you can use different fabrics, different pattern designers, how they work, which ones I recommend, and all of that good stuff. Next month on February 5th, same time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Until then,
happy sewing.